What is up, everyone? It is Mock Draft Monday, and I am joined by my good friend Zach. You know him as Pao Time. Corey couldn't be here tonight. Had a family emergency, so our thoughts go, if everything's okay with his family. But Zach, last minute, Pao Time, our good buddy that we all know and love, I reached out to him like less than an hour before the stream. Hey, you available? He's like, yeah. So, man, I really appreciate you being here, Pao. How are you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing good. I get to talk some football on a Monday night in the off season, and like the football withdrawal, it's real. It is real. However, I am thankful that I get to come on your show and talk about how are we going to fix the Cardinals, and I think my mock draft will do a great job of that tonight. And I'm really excited to interact with you and everyone in the chat. And so, thanks everyone for watching, and we're gonna have a great show.
Well, and I sincerely appreciate you being here. And I saw your mock draft, and you definitely fixed the Cardinals all right.
Oh, yeah, I fixed them good.
The fix is in. So we'll get to that. There's some interesting mock drafts. But, yeah, really appreciate you being here. We only have one more mock draft Monday after this one, next Monday. And then the draft is almost here. So it's pretty, it's getting here. We're all excited. I think we're all ready for it to be here. As much fun as mock draft Mondays have been, I think we're all ready for the actual draft to be here. Got a couple of folks in the chat already. Classy Nasty with the side eyes. We got Lance. Appreciate you being here. Mock draft Monday is live now. So we're going to do a couple of things that we do before we get into the mock drafts. One thing, and we got Eduardo Bernudo saying hello, Joe and Pao. Happy Mock Draft Monday. Here we go. Appreciate you being here. So real quick, I just want to talk about, there's been some things in the news that have impacted, how I look at the mock drafts, and I think how a lot of Cardinals fans have. The big news was the re-signing of AJ Green, as that outside receiver. And I know Cardinals had mixed opinions about AJ Green. He had his moments, good and bad. But re-signing him means that there's less urgency in terms of having to get a receiver early. And a lot of mock drafts had receiver going in the first round. They still might go receiver in the first round, but it's not as much of a certainty now, if that makes sense. Now they could go later. But this is classic Cardinals draft strategy. They try to fill the needs with serviceable veterans from free agency, and then they go into the draft, and if they land someone who will start over the person they sign, then that may happen. If not, they've got that serviceable veteran. So I know for me, receiver, is now less urgent at the top. Doesn't mean I don't go there, but there's less of a pressing issue. And then, there's a few players that they've met with that probably impact things. But want to say hey to, we got let's see, we got Moore's Legacy, Draft Indian Green.
What's up, Morris?
Yeah, we got JP. They're drafting the Hog Mollies and start my. I'll tell you what, JP has been saying they need to go Linderbaum the center, and I've been giving him crap about that. But I will say this: I watched PFF, one of their podcasts, had a mock draft that they went through, and they had the Cardinals taking him. So JP will love that. Moore's Legacy saying they're going to go a first round linebacker because why not? So one of the things I want to do, I do each week, is highlight or profile a player. And someone in the Discord requested Kyle Phillips, receiver out of UCLA. And so I went ahead and went with that. And Kyle Phillips, he's a redshirt junior receiver. He's 5'11", 189. He's projected as a day 3 pick. Maybe he kind of climbs into late day 2, but I think he's probably more likely a day 3 pick. And, he's not the fastest receiver. He's one of those more quicker than fast. His 40 time was in the 4.5s, which is fine. He's not a burner. And I think the high end comp for him The player that, a lot of people kind of say, well, this is maybe who he could become if he's, best case scenario, is Hunter Renfrow, the receiver for the Raiders. Another one of those kind of slot receivers. They're very similar in terms of size. Their combine numbers were similar in terms of the speed. Those kind of slot receivers work the middle of the field, shifty, can get open. So I think that's how he profiles. If the Cardinals go, they need that outside big receiver, and then in the slot they like the smaller guys. They tend to like fast small guys. Like, Kirk actually had decent speed, and Rondale Moore. But if they went with a bigger receiver earlier and Kyle Phillips fell to them on day 3, I could see them maybe looking at him as kind of a depth piece in the slot. What are your thoughts on Kyle Phillips?
Well, Joseph, I just don't know if he can replace a top 5 wide receiver like Christian Kirk, because like Christian Kirk got paid like one.
Right. Well, he was paid like one, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, no, like I think this could be a great solid pickup for the Cardinals. I have heard his names in my pre-draft research, even looking into him for the Rams. Not that the Rams need a wide receiver, but if he's someone that could be a day 3 pick, I honestly think if you have a wide receiver who has fallen in day 3 and maybe he comes from a smaller school or something like that, if you believe in the intangibles of that wide receiver and the game film looks good, it's worth taking a day 3 pick on. So yeah, this could be a good pick for the Cardinals. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's not at the top of my list, but but Moore's legacy, he's saying he's too small. We need big. Well, and here's the thing with the Cardinals offense, though, is they need big and small receivers. They like those bigger receivers on the outside, Hopkins, AJ Green. Hopkins isn't huge, but he plays big, 50-50 balls. But in the slot, they do like those smaller receivers, Rondale Moore. They had Christian Kirk was really intended to be a slot receiver. I think part of the reason Andy Isabella hasn't worked out is they drafted him hoping he could be a slot receiver, but he didn't work out in that position because he was more of an outside receiver. That's my opinion. I might be wrong on that. So I could see like I've been saying with the Cardinals, I wouldn't be shocked if they took 2 receivers in this draft, one early and one late, one big and one small. So if they went with a taller receiver in the early rounds to be that outside receiver of the future, and then in day 3, they got a guy like Kyle Phillips or another smaller slot receiver. They right now at slot, they have Rondale Moore, who's probably going to step into the role, the vacuum left by Kirk. And then they've got Greg Dortch, an undrafted free agent, who's a nice player, but they need 3. They typically like 3 outside, 3 slot in terms of the on the roster. So I think they still have room to get a guy like Kyle Phillips and just have him be part of that depth in the mix with Rondale Moore and Greg Dortch. So, I don't hate that. So that's the player profile we're going to look at today. And what we're going to do now is go on to the mock drafts. And I always start with my co-host guest mock draft first.
Yeah, let's fix the Cardinals.
Yes, the fix is in. So let's see how Pao decided to fix the Cardinals. Whoops, that's too okay. Pao, I clicked on it twice accidentally. So there's a couple trades here.
Yeah.
So the first trade is that he traded back, right? You traded back. In fact, I'm sorry. Why don't you tell us what you did here instead of me narrating?
So again, my logic going into this was we're gonna fix the Cardinals' defense and give Kyler Murray the help on the O-line that he needs. Oh no, don't you worry, Eduardo. I left Matt Ariza out of this mock draft. Don't you worry, because hey, whose house? Hey, Grandizer. So at that 23 spot, I was like, you know what? Just no one here seems like it's quite that value. I had like 7 trade offers here, and so I took the Chiefs, which they had kind of the next closest pick, and I would picked up a couple of picks. But then I thought getting a corner in the draft, one of the top rated corners, an Elam would be a good call. Then into the second round, I really actually liked this pick on Bonito on the edge there, just because you can never have enough good pass rushers. Trey McBride, he's a tight end that I feel like people are starting to talk more about in the like kind of tight end community. So I thought, you know what, instead of going receiver early here, get a big body, kind of pass catching tight end.
Mm-hmm.
Then in the third round, the guard, I just thought, we got to get this O-line together for Kyler here, right? And then the Noah Ellis pick, he was there, rated high, and for kind of the at the defensive, interior or tackle position. Let's get those likes up, people. Let's do it, especially if you love this draft. And then I remember, you guys lost Chase Edmonds, and so we picked up Knight, and I got an A+ on that. PFF liked that in the 6th round, and then I just knew, I'm like, we need that magical player. We need that player that is going to take the Cardinals over the top here in the 6th round of the NFL draft. But I could tell he wasn't going to last. And so I made the tough call to trade with the master negotiator, Les Snead, the GM of the Los Angeles Rams. And I offered, a couple of picks in this year's draft. He said no. And he was going to take Luke Wattenberg. And he swindled me, man. And so I ended up having to trade a 6th and a 7th this year, and then 2 first rounds in the future years, and 2nd rounds and 3rd rounds, just to pull this trade off. But guys, the Cardinals got their center for the next 10 years, Luke Wattenberg. Bank it. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. You're welcome, Cardinals fans. And and then I finished off the draft getting a Landman, the linebacker, late. And then I could have gotten Matt Ariza, but you know what? I really want the Rams to get him, so I decided to put Ryan Stonehouse on there.
Well, you definitely fixed the Cardinals all right.
Oh, yeah. They're fixed.
Yeah, that trade checks out. Yeah.
Good value.
But like you guys wouldn't know what to do with the 1st-round picks in the first place. I guess trade them for other players.
We
right?
would trade them to others.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, Moore's Legacy has a counteroffer.
Oh, you know what? Moore's Legacy, that's not even close to what those 2 players are worth to the Rams.
So, aside from the really sketchy trade, that particular trade, I do like this draft. I like trading back in the 1st round. I liked the players you picked. If there's anything I really like Noah Ellis as a late kind of defensive tackle. Dylan Parham's great. A lot of players I like here. I would have liked to have seen a receiver somewhere, right? And in fact, I want to kind of come back. Lance asked this question: how many wide receivers will they keep in the roster? They have, right now there's 6 that you've listed here: Hopkins, AJ Moore, West, Isabel, Dortch. Now I will say, they typically keep 6. And I think they'll keep 6. They may have room for 1. They'll keep 1 or 2 on the practice squad. I don't think Isabella will be around on this roster by the time the regular season starts. I think they'll move on from him. I think with signing AJ Green back, I think maybe they're more likely to just draft 1 receiver rather than 2. But maybe they do take 2 if one of them's late. And Dortch was on the practice squad last year. Maybe he's back on the practice squad if he doesn't make the roster. They're not afraid of that competition. So I think they will keep 6 receivers. I think they will draft 1. They could draft 2, but in the end, 6 receivers on the roster plus, a couple on the practice squad.
Well, and I think we're seeing a trend in the NFL because of the discrepancy in talent at the cornerback position in comparison to wide receiver counterparts, where wide receivers are just coming out of college ready to play more and more, and not just in the 1st round, but in the later rounds of the draft as well, where cornerbacks, there's just not that same talent combined with the rules that kind of favor the receiver in today's passing game. So I don't think it's, for a team that, can move the ball down the field through the air like the Cardinals can. it would make sense. And that's probably a mistake in this mock draft. But truthfully, this mock draft was thrown together in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah. It was like, hey, can you jump on tonight? Sure. If you want to do a mock draft, yeah, I'll do one right now. So yeah, I'm not going to give you too much crap. Now that trade, but yeah, no. Yeah, that makes sense. So so again, I do like the players that you got in here.
Even Wattenberg.
Yeah, especially Wattenberg. Yeah, right. But yeah. So overall, I think it's a good mock draft, and I think they'll take a receiver somewhere. But overall, you hit on a lot of key positions. So I'm going to bring up my mock draft, which I made sure that mine was different this time.
Hey, you took one of my favorite players.
I did. So
how dare you?
After that trade you just tried to pull off?
Yeah, okay,
I dare.
That's fair.
But this mock draft is in response to, and I didn't mention this at the top, but this is another thing in response to something else that's been in the news with the Cardinals. Jahan Dotson, a receiver out of Penn State, he's kind of 5'11". He's a little bit, he's more, you think of him as a slot build, but he does have some skill sets that translate to outside. He's a guy that, he's been mocked to the in mock drafts to the Cardinals before by some people who know what they're talking about. I think Peter Schrager had him mocked and a few other folks. And there's just a lot of whispers that they really like him. Mm-hmm. And he's not a guy that I've mock draft to them in the past because I've been looking bigger wide receivers, for that outside spot. And slot receivers, if I go with the smaller receivers, I've been looking late. Also, he ranks on PFF's board. He's in the 45th or something like that in terms of the ranking. So just in the first round, when I'm picking a receiver, there's always guys that are rated higher than him still on the board that I go with. Or if I don't go receiver in the first round, when I get to the second round, he's always gone by then. But because he's a guy that has been linked to the Cardinals and been a lot of talk that they like him lately, I wanted this mock draft. I wanted to do something a little different. I wanted to make sure that I took him, but I wanted to do it with a trade back. Now, he might not last to 29. He's a guy that even though he's ranked by a lot of websites, and PFF has him in the 40s, there's always those guys every year that all the mock drafts have, or all the kind of the various mock draft simulators have ranked later, but the teams around the league like them better than the draft pundits. And sometimes those guys go earlier than people think they're going to go. And Dotson might be that guy. So he might go in the 20s, whether the Cardinals take him or not. But I wanted to do a trade back because if they take Dotson, this is the kind of scenario I'd like to see where they trade back and still get him. So I actually, interestingly enough, and we didn't coordinate this, I traded back to 29, which was the same spot you traded back to.
Wow. Did I get a little bit more in my trade though?
I think you did, and I really, but that you got a little bit more, and then you took a lot more later. But when I do these trades, the mock drafting, sometimes they're the trades are a little kind of unrealistic. I always try to get them somewhere around the 55% likelihood to, in there to try to make them closer to reality. So, I had the Cardinals trade back the 23rd pick overall. They also gave up a 7th round pick to move back to the 29th and got a couple thirds, I think is what I got out of here. Yeah. So I took Jahan Dotson, a guy who would probably, he's one of the comps that I've on NFL.com comped him to Emmanuel Sanders. Okay. So that's an interesting comp.
That's a good comp.
Yeah, really good player, right? He's had a great career.
He's produced well in his career, yeah.
Yeah, so I went with Jahan Dotson. He would probably play some on the slot, some on the outside for them. With AJ Green on the roster, he would to be honest, when they're doing, 4 wide receiver sets, you'd probably see Dotson in the slot with Rondale Moore a lot. And then I went with, edge rusher Nick Benito in round 2. And then I went with Zach Tom, who he's a tackle here, but he's probably going to play guard at the next level. And I know you love him, and I read up about him a little bit. And he's really quick, really good at pulling, and really good athleticism. So he's a guy that they could draft in third round who could become a future starting guard for them.
I wouldn't say this. Like, to me, out of any of the offensive linemen I've researched into this draft, of the ones that would be available to the Rams later in the draft, Zach Tom screams the type of player that the Rams draft at the O-line. Someone who's versatile, someone who they're not going to expect him to be a starter right away. And just, he seems like he is a Ram. And I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would put money on Zach Tom being a Ram.
So, and listen, I'm hoping he's a Cardinal, but no, okay. Here's, and when you look at PFF's take on it, he's 6'4", 304. And, Lance is asking a really good question. Either these tackles play guard? We need depth at, cause I've got a tackle later. PFF, even though he's listed as a tackle, they say, their little snippet is he's arguably the most athletic interior offensive line prospect in this class. He's so sudden in his ability to mirror, helping him earn a 90.2.1 pass block grade. So he's 6'4", 304. That's guard size, guard center size more than tackle. You can be a tackle play that size. But when you have a guy who's that quick and athletic, what you think about is a guard, especially in a zone blocking scheme or a scheme that wants your guards to pull.
Yeah.
Get out there and do pull on and block on screen passes. So I think he's a guy who's probably going to be a guard. So when I drafted him here, the idea was he would be competing for a starting guard spot sooner rather than later. So I see him as a great fit at guard, right? And I know I understand why you like him, and I'm sure he would fit the Rams really well. And I think he'd also, be great. I think he'd fit a lot of teams really well.
Yeah. Well, good players can look good on a lot of good teams.
Right. Yeah. So then I went with another, cornerback in round 3, Cordell Flott out of LSU. Brian Robinson is a running back that has met with the Cardinals. They've had a meeting with him. He is a big back, but he can catch the ball. He's functional catching the ball. He's not as good as some of the running backs. So, as much as we've been talking smaller kind of scat back for the Cardinals, to replace Edmonds, they do like some of those bigger backs, and they like Connor, and they like what Connor does. And that Brian Robinson's skill set, being a big running back who can catch a little bit, reminds me a little bit of what they have in Connor.
Yeah.
So I have them taking him later in the third round. Percy Butler, safety. He's really a special teams ace. Give him some depth at safety, but a special teamer. Cole Turner, a tight end who I like, who reminds me of Dan Arnold, the guy who played for the Cardinals a couple of years ago. More of a receiver, but not really a blocker so much. And then Isaiah Weston is a really interesting guy, and he kind of came onto my radar after watching Brett Coleman has a series of videos he's done this week on the skill positions, and he talked about Weston. And Weston is a day 3 pick, but he's interesting because he's a guy who's played in a program where he hasn't, where he didn't put up huge numbers because, he's at Northern Iowa, not a huge powerhouse. But he's 6'4", 214. He's big. He's got that athleticism. He's the kind of receiver on the outside that they like. So I took him as a guy that they might develop a little bit like Wesley, but maybe has even some better tools than Wesley athletically. And so they've got Dotson's that slot receiver who will make the roster early. Weston's the guy who might be a practice squad guy, might make the roster, but would be that bigger receiver. And then, and then I got Swenson, who's just more, he's a true tackle. He's big as in round 7. So what, aside from Zach Tom, anything sent out to you on this one?
Yeah. So Cordell Flott, I feel like a lot of mock drafts I've seen with almost every team, he is a name I'm seeing a lot in that 3rd or 4th round kind of range. So I from what I haven't looked up a lot of his career or anything out of LSU, but he's clearly a name that's getting some buzz within mock drafts, which I don't know how much validity there is to that. But yeah, I think I think at some point in this draft, the Cardinals need to take a risk on to improve their secondary, which I think with Flott and Butler, you're kind of doing that here. I'm interested in a little bit of you start off with the wide receiver and then you draft another wide receiver later. So is that you kind of admitting to like Isabella it was a failed draft pick and it's time to cut him loose?
Yeah, I'm kind of under the assumption that Isabella won't be here. I mean, I think they gave him permission to seek a trade, but nothing's happened, which means there probably isn't much interest. Yeah. It hasn't worked out. I think under the right circumstances, Isabella could be a decent NFL player, but he hasn't had the right situation. For whatever reason, it hasn't worked. Yeah. He's had a couple plays where he's made big plays, but for whatever reason, he needs a change of scenery. They had some injuries. There have been points last year where you would have expected him to get some more playing time and he didn't. So I think they'll move on from him and they would rather put a roster spot to a younger receiver who has a future with them. I think this is last year of his rookie deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think Isabella is going to need to move on and he needs to change the scenery and I think they're going to move on from him.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And then I guess my only kind of last thought that jumps out on, pardon me, I had to burp, is I always am a fan of, if you have the chance to trade back to accumulate more picks, do it. And I actually think in the draft, my favorite rounds have become the third and fourth rounds. I really think those are the players, because if you hit on a third round or later talent, it does so much for your team, right? If you have one draft class that like you hit on say 80% of your picks, that transforms your team, right? And maybe it won't be immediately that first year, but within year 2, year 3 of that draft class, if they're the majority of them are still with your team contributing, that's awesome, right? And so when you trade back like that to accumulate more picks, it's just giving yourself that much more competition, that much more, opportunity to build the Super Bowl roster that every team wants to build.
Yeah, I'm with you in terms of I am a huge fan, of trading back. I love getting day 2 picks. Now, my favorite round is round 2. And because for a couple of reasons, there have been analytical studies that have looked at how round 2, I 3-4 years ago, I read an article. It was on 538.com that does a lot of, kind of analytic stuff. And they were talking about how just using quantitative ways of measuring production out of the actual players you get versus draft capital and everything. Second round is the best round in terms of just the outcomes. Yeah. And then you add to that, just in general, think about just how many stars come from the second round. Every position except quarterback, really.
Yeah.
You find like Devontae Adams, Derrick Henry. You could go on and on. And I know you can find diamonds in the rough in any round, but like the second round is consistently a place where a lot of really good players go. But I would support what you're saying in third and fourth round this year in particular. I was reading something today that talked about how a lot of evaluators and general managers and scouts have said that this year's draft in particular, because of COVID and some things that have happened with that, players taking the years off, this year's draft is extra deep. The top line talent isn't as good as some years, but the depth is really there. And the third and fourth round in this year's draft in particular is really good.
Yeah.
For sure. Want to say hey to a couple folks that are in here. We've got some comments, underscores in here. He's talking about a couple players he likes. Jemery Saylor from Georgia, played guard in 2021, took over Andrew Thomas from Giants. He could be another guy that translates. We've got I Am Bears in here. Yo, a little late. How we doing, everyone?
Oh, I feel you. I am Bear. I'm a Raptors fan too. It's hurting, man. But Scotty B, the future is bright with him.
And then we got Simon who's here. Bear, are you in Toronto? Are we neighbors? I know Simon's in Canada as well, right? We got some Canadians in the house.
Hey, let's go Canada.
Right. And we got Calvin in the house. Great to see Pao in the conversation. Agreed, consistent value in the third, fourth. Yeah, Calvin.
Thank you, Calvin.
No DT in this draft. Yeah, that's a weak spot in this, right? And that's so they probably, I mean, they need to do something there. So they would, if they went this route, they'd address that in free agency. I think, as I went through it, I think there just weren't any defensive tackles I liked value wise, right? Mm-hmm. What do we think about Sterling? I don't know much about Sterling Weatherford. Do you know any? I'm not familiar. I'm gonna have to look up Sterling Weatherford. So I don't know. NFL highlights is here. A Philadelphia 76 fan, but Arizona Cardinals fans. Well, we appreciate you being here. North Dakota, so close to Canada. Okay, there we go. So yeah, thanks for everyone for being here. So we're gonna get into some of the other mock drafts. I mentioned Corey Red Sea couldn't be here, had a family emergency. But we're gonna look at his mock draft. He's also traded. Everyone's trading back to 29.
It's a cool thing.
I swear we didn't coordinate it, right?
Maybe we're kind of speaking it into fruition here a little bit.
Yeah, right. David P saying, okay, so Weatherford's a safe. That's probably why I don't know much about him, because I haven't looked at safeties, to be honest. I don't see that as a top line need for the Cardinals. I think if they go safety, it's on day 3. A guy like that's more of a special teamer. So that's probably why I'm not really familiar with him. Let's see real quick. Hey Joseph, look at some tape from McCall from Kentucky Beast up deal. Okay, so I'll take a look at him. I know I've seen him show up like in mock drafts. Real quick, I got Elo on here. Thank you. Appreciate you as well. Thanks for being here. So Red Sea, he traded back to 29. He took Arnold Ebiketie, who's a edge rusher who, is kind of in that early second, late first round area. I will tell you, a lot of the analytics really fare well for Arnold Ebiketie out of Penn State. Like he rates better than any other edge rusher in certain analytics. So I wouldn't hate if they took him here. He might be an edge rusher. I mean, he's one of those guys that might end up being better than a lot of the guys taken before him. Cornerback Kyler Gordon, who out of Washington, Cardinals like cornerbacks out of Washington or defensive backs out of Washington. He's kind of the guy who plays across from McDuffie. I think he's a really interesting potential. He's a very athletically gifted. My take on him is he's like Marco Wilson athletically, but graded better in college than Marco Wilson did. And then we got Nicholas Petit-Frere, a tackle, James Cook, a running back, great catching the ball. Otito Ogbanuya, defensive tackle from UCLA. Charlie Kohler, tight end. Trey Turner, wide receiver, big kind of a 50-50 ball type receiver. Center James Empey, Matt Ariza, and then linebacker Merlin Robinson. I like waiting to hear. Finally, we've got a Matt Ariza sighting, right?
Yep.
So what's your take on this mock draft?
Yeah, I think this mock draft addresses a lot of the Cardinals' needs, but I think what's interesting about this is it addresses it in such a different way. That's the beauty of these mock draft Mondays, is we really get to see like the different strategies, and you can make an argument that all of them are correct, right? Like it's all speculation until the players are actually in pads and on the field. I think probably the best pick here, in my opinion, I'm growing higher and higher on James Cook, and so I actually think that's a really good pick. And I know PFF grades it C+, but I've learned that grading system is just automated, and you can't really trust it too much. But yeah, I think getting James Cook in the 3rd round. He's a running back with really high upside, and it's not just because he's Dalvin Cook's brother. It's because he's a really good football player.
Yeah.
I'm interested in, because in my mock draft, your mock draft, and now in this one we have the Cardinals taking a tight end, and we've had 3 different tight ends, so that's pretty interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I really love James Cook. In my opinion, I've said this multiple times. I watched the combine, and he was the most natural pass catcher
Yeah,
amongst the running back group.
absolutely. Yep.
And he doesn't give you a lot, really anything between tackles. He is that guy who's going to be catching the ball and play, and then lining up as a slot receiver sometimes. So I think, so if you're getting him to be that receiving back almost exclusively. But yeah, we've all three have taken tight end. I think, the Cardinals have met with a number of tight ends. So I think that even though they re-signed, Ertz and Max Williams, and they signed, I think it was Steven Anderson at tight end at like a special teams kind of tight end. They still might be interested in picking one up for the kind of to develop for the future. So yeah, for sure. So we're going to move on to our next mock draft, which is Lance, who's in the chat, a really good dude who's always really supportive of the channel. And he started off with Travis Jones, a guy I absolutely love, defensive tackle who would really help in terms of the run stopping, or helping with the run defense. Darian Kennard, tackle out of Kentucky, but he's probably going to, move into guard most likely. But he could play tackle. Then he doubled down on that offensive line with Dylan Parham, who's kind of a guard, center, interior offensive lineman. Went with the edge rusher Adam Anderson, who's, if the legal stuff clears up, he's gonna, that's a big question. Halfback Devontae Price out of Florida International. Isaac Taylor Stewart, cornerback out of USC. Makai Polk, a receiver that he out of Mississippi State. I know, and Micah Woods, a receiver out of Oklahoma. And I know Lance really likes those two receivers. He's mentioning to me that I need to check them out. A couple late round kind of flyers. So, what's your take on this mock draft?
I love that he starts the draft off in the trenches, right? They always say you gotta win in the trenches if you're gonna win the NFL, and so starting off with the defensive interior and Travis Jones, then your tackle you pick up there, and even a guard after that, and then your edge. So literally his first 4 picks are all about kind of winning that trench battle. And then finishing off with, some skill position players. I don't think that's a bad route to go. I think Cardinals fans would be pretty happy if a draft like this happened. Obviously, a lot of people always cheer when you get a wide receiver or a running back or like a playmaker. And so the fact that they went kind of the back there, we're like, again, I feel like the Cardinals have a lot of their star talent in place. It's just a matter of finding the right support players to support that star talent. And a draft like this, I think, would go a long way with that.
Yeah, I think they would. I think, defensive run defense was arguably their biggest weakness most of the year last year, before things fell apart at the end. So I think Travis Jones pretty quickly fixes that. It really helps out a lot with that, helping with the trenches. So, I think a lot of Cardinals fans would want to see a receiver within the first 2 days. And so I think a lot of fans might be, a little disappointed not to see a receiver earlier. But I think fixing the trenches like this, and, the offensive line right now is in decent shape. Some might disagree, but they've got serviceables to good starters across the board, but they've got a lot of guys whose contracts are going to be up in the year or two and that are older. They need to plan for the future. So I think getting some of these guys, Kennard and Parham really helps set them up in that way. Mm-hmm. I think Taylor Stewart's a really good pick on day 3. I'm not even sure if he'll last that long. And I don't know enough about these receivers, so I need to check them out a little bit. But I like getting some guys to develop. So yeah, I think Lance has got some. I think he's got a draft here that fixes a lot of things for the Cardinals. Maybe some fans there wouldn't be enough flashiness on the front end in terms of playmakers early. It's because it's so trenches heavy, but I think it would really do a lot to help address some key areas. So for sure,
I would make Lance the Cardinals GM.
Yeah, right. And Lance is mentioning Woods ran one of the fastest 40s. I feel like he got more playing time, he'd be a second, third round. That's fair.
Cool.
That's
a fair pick.
Yeah, and when you get onto day 3, what you're really looking for is traits that translate, right? You want to find those guys that have the traits that translate to the NFL, that have NFL traits, and then try to develop them.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the things the Cardinals have missed on the last couple of years on day 3, and day 3 misses everyone. I mean, it's a crapshoot. So I'm not really taking them to task for this. Every team misses on day 3, those 6th and 7th round picks, but last couple of years, the Cardinals have drafted some guys like center Michael Manet, they drafted last year. And then the year before that, linebacker Evan Weaver. And those guys were guys that were productive in college, but they didn't have the physical traits to translate to the NFL. They weren't fast enough, strong enough, quick enough. And neither of them even made the roster. I think Weaver was on the practice squad for a while, but neither one of them stuck. And they were kind of wasted picks because what they went with is guys that produced in college, but just did not have the physical traits where they were going to be able to compete at the NFL. Yeah. So what you want to look for are guys that are raw, but have traits, right? Mm-hmm. So it sounds like Woods is maybe more like that, right? So yeah, and he says, Mackay Polk plays like Wesley, but a lot bigger in stature. So there you go, so yeah. Underscore is not sure how he feels about a UConn player's first round pick. It's not a powerhouse, but I'll tell you what, Travis Jones is a guy I wouldn't mind him. I wouldn't hate that in the first round. I like Jones, but so now and he's saying, don't get me wrong, I'd rather go Perry and Winfrey, Wyatt, both. I'll tell you what, as a talent, Wyatt offers more in the pass rush. Winfrey is a guy you can get a little bit later, so I like the value better. But I really love Travis Jones. So yeah, but that's me. So no, I think overall, yeah, Lance did a good job here. There's some nice players there for sure. So next mock draft is Moore's Legacy, who's been in the chat here with us.
Hey, Moore's Legacy. Okay. Hey, we got
some trades going on. Yeah.
Oh, Moore's Legacy.
Yeah. So, started out with Devontae Wyatt, who's got some off the field stuff going on right now, though. There's some domestic kind of history of domestic violence. So a lot of people saying he slides and the Cardinals aren't going to take him. Right. So we'll see. But talent-wise, I love Devontae Wyatt. Nick Bonita again. We've got Khalil Shakir, a receiver out of Boise State, round 3, nice receiver. Jason Poe out of Mercer, that is in Macon. That's a college university in Macon. That's like an hour and 15 minutes from me. So the dude is really fun to watch. He needs some work, I think, in terms of mechanics, but he's really good pulling and really quick. Tight end Derek Teese Jr. And then we get a little spicy here. Trading Andy Isabella and a 2nd round pick for Brandon Cooks and a 6th round pick. So Cook's a good receiver. I mean, you know him.
I don't want to see him in a Cardinals uniform.
Well, that tells me something, right?
Yeah.
And then we got a guy who is kind of a favorite here, Ty Chandler. Really good, really good late round receiver. One of the better ones on day 3 available, I think. We've got Jordan Jackson, defensive interior out of Air Force. Guy who's needs some development. Playing at someplace like Air Force, but has some nice size and stuff. Another halfback, Kennedy Brooks out of Oklahoma, and then a QB, Cole Kelly. So going with maybe a guy just kind of a developmental backup. So real quick, I want to say hey to Aaron Van Buren, who's popped in here. Always appreciate Aaron.
What's up, Aaron?
Yep. So what's your take on this spicy?
Oh, let's unpack Moore's Legacy draft here. Okay, like again, in general, I love that you're addressing a lot of the Cardinals' needs that many of these mock drafts have done, but it's done a different way. I gotta focus first and foremost, at this top, the top 2 picks here. Again, solidifying that defensive line, interior end on the edge, and I think the reason why a lot of Cardinals fans are drafting that way is because you guys all know the Cardinals struggled to stop the run, and at times that was kind of their Achilles heel, so to speak, where they couldn't just get off the field, right, on defense. So
Yeah.
I think, picks like that are addressing that issue. You got your wide receiver, your guard, another tight end that we have not yet seen tonight in Derek Jease Jr., but I've seen him around at San Jose State. And so, yeah, it will be interesting to see if any of these mock drafts are somewhat close or if it's some sort of combination to any of them. But this trade here, because so the Texans actually traded a second-round pick to the Rams to get Brandon Cooks back in the day. So if and I actually think the Texans he just signed an extension with the Texans. So I'd be a little shocked if they traded him right away. But I do like the idea of trading for an established wide receiver. And is Isabella? He's still on a rookie deal, right?
Yeah, I think this is going to be the last year of his deal.
So his contract isn't hard to trade then. So I don't mind the idea of trading Isabella and a second round pick for an established veteran wide receiver and getting maybe some pick compensation in return. It's a bold move. I respect it. It. And you got your running back. I think, is this the latest we've seen a running back tonight?
Maybe thus far.
Maybe,
yeah.
So, yeah. And again, Ty Chandler, we've seen his name pop up several times. And even the Cole Kelly pick at the end, I never think, if there's a quarterback where you think, like, if they fall like to the late rounds and you're like, you know what, even if this is a decent practice squad quarterback, there's value in that to your organization. Because I know the Cardinals, they have Colt McCoy as their backup, and he's pretty, a pretty decent. He's a great backup quarterback for an NFL team. But if you believe Cole Kelly can develop into something, even a serviceable, quarterback, why not? If you like him.
Yeah, and they do have Trace McSorley as well, but who's kind of that third guy, but. You kind of you need at least 3 quarterbacks and maybe a fourth one on the practice squad. So for sure, real quick, and Iron Bear isn't. I want to say this. I know Jordan Jackson said he was wrong. Here, I will say this. I noticed this. Jordan Jackson, PFF has him listed at 5'10" for some reason, but he is 6'5". They used to have it right, but for whatever reason, they've got it wrong. They have him at 5'10", 294.
That's so wrong.
But they had him right. I'm just going to tell you, there's 1 or 2 other players I've seen this on where for whatever reason their database or something got wrong. They got something lined up wrong. But he's 6'5", 285, which is a good size for kind of the interior defensive lineman. Real quick, couple of questions, comments. Does anyone know what the price was to Isabella to trade? I don't know if anyone said there was a price, but I think, excuse me, man. I need some water. I think the Cardinals would take anything for him at this point. A day 3 pick. I just don't think there's a market. I think anyone that's interested in him is going to wait till the Cardinals release him. That's kind of what I think.
Do you want me to take Aaron's question while you get a drink?
Yes, that would be great. Let's see. You pay actually. Yeah, Aaron's question for you. Yes.
Yeah. So he says, Pao, if you could change one Rams draft pick, who would it be? What year and why? Oh, Aaron, there are so many draft picks I would love to change. But I will, because we're living in recent times, I will talk recently. Last year, the Rams picked Tutu Atwell with this as their first draft pick of the year in the second round, and he was like he's a 5'8" receiver, like 155 pounds, and he got injured last year, and so like he's not a bust yet. I don't believe that. Like I believe he still has potential, but just given the Rams wide receiving core, I felt at that. At that spot in the draft, there were so many players we could have, used that pick on, like a Creed Humphrey. I would have loved that. And Moore's legacy, I would actually not trade the Jared Goff pick because I remember the Rams quarterbacks before Jared Goff. And Goff gets a lot of heat. And I obviously, like, I'm really happy we made the trade for Stafford. But, like, before Jared Goff, like it was horrible. It was horrible. And I'm pretty sure, isn't Jared Goff like the Cardinals' favorite quarterback?
He may have a little bit of success against us historically, even with the Lions.
A little bit.
Yeah. He's our favorite, all right. Yeah. So great question. Yeah. And like, Simon says he was the bargaining chip for, part of the deal. So there you go. Yeah, no, so I think that's fair. So yeah, I think I think that this is a good draft overall. I like some of the players on here. I mean, I like a lot of the players in every one of these drafts, but I like what he's done here. I have a feeling from what I'm reading and hearing, Devontae Wyatt is a guy they're not going to take. I wouldn't be surprised if Wyatt slides more because of what's going on with that stuff. Yeah. But so yeah.
Honestly, isn't it like when you're like I've had my team draft character concern guys before, and it's one of those things when you initially draft them, you're so nervous. You're like, oh, is this gonna be a distraction? And sometimes it is, but there is something really fulfilling, when your team drafts, a young man, and then he matures out of it, and he turns into like a just a class act human being player on and off the field. And we have seen that before in the NFL with character concerns in the draft. And, newsflash, young men grow up.
Yeah. The Cardinals have had it go both ways. Like a guy that when people are talking about, why they talk about Robert Kimdiche, a guy who kind of had some stuff off the field and he didn't work out. But then, we drafted Tyrann Mathieu, right? And the Honey Badger. And listen, I know like we ended up releasing him after he got injured. There's a little bit of bad blood between him and Steve Keim, a little saltiness. But setting that aside, Honey Badger has been a perfect citizen, great locker room guy, and I think you have to look at as a team, you have to really look at what kind of character issues we're talking about. With Honey Badger, it was some immaturity stuff that he kind of recognized. Hey, if I want to be a player in this league, if I want a future, I got to get this cleaned up. And it wasn't like abuse stuff. It was some stuff. I think he had, kind of like he liked the marijuana, maybe a little immaturity stuff, but it wasn't like domestic violence and things like that. So, you just, it's tough, but sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. Right. So yeah.
And now Tyrann Mathieu is possibly going to be a Ram.
I mean, maybe, right. So yeah. I think there's some.
Yeah, I see you, Mr. Mono.
But he says just teasing.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
So yeah. So let's move on to our next mock draft. Oh, I did want to mention. You mentioned Tutu Atwell, and that's I tell you, as you were talking about that, it reminded me. Like I remember that Mel Kiper was mocking him to the Cardinals, and I didn't want them to take him because just a small receiver like that. So I was really happy when the Rams took him because it meant that my Cardinals weren't taking him. But like I worry about a receiver that size being able to make it in the league.
Well, and I feel like they drafted him to mainly be a punt returner, but he never really got into that role. And then mid-season, when we kind of tried some other options there, and it didn't work out, unfortunately. But I'm still optimistic. He's pretty active on Twitter that he's going to prove all the doubters wrong, and so I'm hoping that's the case.
And we've taken small wide receivers, but Atwell is a whole other level of small. Like there are small receivers, and then there's Tutu Atwell. Like
we had Tavon Austin for a while, so
but like Tutu Atwell is 5'9", 165.
Yeah.
Okay, and just as a point of comparison, like Rondale Moore is a small receiver the Cardinals have. Rondale Moore is 5'7", 181. Rondale Moore is shorter, but he is 180. He's built thicker, right? Yeah. So when you look at 5'9", 165, that's That's JJ. Was it JJ Nelson? I think the Cardinals had years ago, like really small. So I just don't know that you've seen receivers like that be successful, but we'll see. Yeah. So yeah. So next we have Chris Young. I don't think I've seen him in the stream, but he's regularly here. Yeah. He's traded back. It looks like a good bit. I think he traded back.
Wow, to the second round.
Okay. Yeah, and picked up multiple. Got a second, a third, and a 6, I think. So really stocked up on those day 2 picks. Went with cornerback Jalen Petrie, who's a cornerback, could also play a little bit of safety, kind of nickel and safety, but cornerback mostly. I think Nick Benito.
We've seen him a lot today.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Fedarian Mathis, defensive interior. Marquand McCall, Derek Deese, Ryan Stonehouse. Is Stonehouse the new Matt Araiza? Malachi Carter, a big receiver out of Georgia Tech. Nick Ford, and safety Kendrick Duncan. Hey, Lanson, minus that punter, this is a boss draft. Right? Yeah, exactly. So what anything stand out to you about this mock draft?
Yeah, he 4 of his first 5 picks are on the defensive side of the ball. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Just interesting for a team that's kind of known more for their identity on their offense. And I again, not that this is a bad draft at all, but I just don't know with an offensive-minded head coach in Cliff Kingsbury, I just don't know if this draft is what the Cardinals are trying to build their team like through the draft. But then again, yeah, because we're not, this is our first mock draft tonight that didn't include a running back, so that's interesting as well. And finally, we got a repeat tight end in Derek Deese Jr. Again, it's all speculation right now, but I think there's a lot of good picks here. I'd be interested. I wish Chris Young was here so he could,
Well, he actually just put a comment in here.
Oh, he is here. Oh,
yeah, he was lurking, but he's here.
Yeah. Hey, Chris. Yeah, I'd be interested in Chris Young if you could just elaborate a little bit on your 3rd round pick and your 6th round pick, just drafting both defensive, interior linemen there. I think that's interesting.
Yeah. I think I would also like to see at least one more offensive player in the first first 2 days, or at least in the first 4 or 5 picks here. And maybe even also a skill position, not just, I like getting Dylan Parham, but I'd like to get a running back or receiver in there earlier, But he's got his blasphemous defense of his punter, who isn't Matt Araiza, but he's a good punter too.
Mm-hmm. But I don't think I've ever had a draft in my lifetime where I've heard punters talked about more than this year. Where like you have Matt Araiza, you have Stonehouse, and then you have Stout as well, and like I've heard people say like, well, Matt Araiza hype is nice, but like Stout's the way to go, or like teams don't have and it's like, who are these 3 punters that probably aren't going to get drafted? Like,
it's like punter. We've got punter snobs now. Like,
I don't
only normies pick Araiza.
Yeah,
people who know what they're talking about are like Stout. Only a normie would pick Araiza, right?
It's so funny. Like, we're fighting over punters. Like, there's a good chance that none of them get drafted at all.
Right. The Scott Player hype, right? Scott Player, really good punter we had, right? But I like a lot of the players on here. I think Mathis is a really nice defensive interior pick if we don't take one early. Let's see. Mr. Romano's saying every time I take a cornerback as our first pick, I just get ticked at how the board falls. I have a feeling Keim is going to draft a cornerback a year too late. Yeah, when I take cornerback early, same thing. It's just, man, there's cornerbacks I like a little bit later and some I like earlier, but there's just not really any I like that really are right in line with pick number 23. So I'm with you there, unless someone slides to us. Mr. Mono likes the trade though, right? But yeah, I think this is a good mock draft overall. But I'm with you. I'd probably personally would like to see a playmaker skill position, in the first 5 picks. But I'm with you there. So our next mock draft is Rafael Castillo, who I know I've seen in here a few times. So he's been around here. Another trade back, trading back to 27, picking up some draft capital. He's got a 3rd and a 4th round pick in the trade. You like them 3rd and 4th round, so I think this has already got a Pao Time stamp of approval right there.
Yeah.
So he trades back. Trades back at Travis Jones, gets an edge rusher, Kingsley Enagbare, Dylan Parham, who's been showing up a lot. Then he doubles down, gets Luke Fortner. So we got 2 interior offensive linemen, really trying to set that up for the future. Receiver Tyquan Thornton, who ran a blazing 40 out of Baylor. The edge Adam Anderson, who there's a big question there with the the legal stuff. Another guard, Josh Rivas. Rafael is really setting up our offensive line for the future. Of course, Matt Ariza, defensive interior DJ Dale, and then a big receiver, Dejon Dixon, out of a very small university who dominated the competition, but you do wonder how will he play against better competition. So thoughts on this one?
Yeah. Again, another draft where we kind of see both the trenches really as a priority here. I like the Luke Fortner pick. I've seen him go. I have seen drafts where he's gone in the 2nd round even. And I have seen him go like in the 4th round also. So that's kind of interesting to see where his range is. The other kind of interesting thing I find about this draft here is the 2 edge players there. And Josh, am I pronouncing it? Is it Rivas?
I'm not sure. Rivas.
Rivas. Okay. Natural. Whenever I see VAS, it's in Canadian English. It's a little bit different pronunciation. Anyway,
okay.
So I Rivas anyway. Yeah, like I think picking that guard in the 6th round, and I've seen him go as early as the 4th round, so getting good value there. And you got your classic Matt Ariza.
It's not official if it doesn't have Ariza, right?
Yeah. Again, I think this is a great draft by Rafael, and I think Cardinals fans would be happy with this. Again, not a skill position until the 4th round in the 5th pick. So again, 4 out of 5 of these picks, aren't like a receiver, or running back, or a corner.
Yeah, and Eduardo Brunel saying, Rivas is Spanish. That's how I pronounce it, using kind of a Spanish kind of way of pronouncing those letters. So that's kind of my take too.
Thank you, Eduardo.
Appreciate that. So here's that last pick is someone Kime would trade up in the 4th round and take. That he would trade up to get right. We have some history of those kind of picks. So I love Travis Jones. I love trading back to get him. I like getting edge. I love taking an edge rusher in round 2. I think the value there's going to be great. I really like going Parham and Fortner. Like, even though it feels a little redundant into your offensive line, I love the possibility of setting up, getting our future center and a guard of the future right there. Anderson is one of those guys that I just don't think you're going to get. I think with Adam Anderson, either his legal stuff is going to clear up and he's going to get drafted like on day 2 because he's a 1st round talent, or he's going to not have it cleared up and he's not going to get drafted. I could be wrong, but I think that's how it's going to play out. So I just don't think you're anyone, and I've drafted him before, but I just don't think I don't think it's going to play out this way, but that's just my opinion. Then we go with more guard depth on Rivas. Defensive interior late from Dale. So just a couple things for me. If it were me, I think 3 offensive linemen, 3 interior offensive linemen, there starts to be a point with where are they going to fit on the roster? Yeah. And Rivas would end up having to be on a practice squad probably, and I think he'd get poached from a practice squad. Yeah. So that becomes one of those things where I love those 3 players. I just don't think logistically it works. And then if I'm going 2 receivers, we talked about this earlier. These Tyquan Thornton 6'2" and DeJon Dixon 6'3". If I'm going 2 receivers, I want one of them to be a smaller slot receiver. That's just me. But that's just maybe I'm nitpicking, but I love some of the players in this draft. I think it would address some needs now and for the future. So for sure. So let's move on to our next one. This is Desert Sports / AZ Sport. His AZ Sports Fan 20 is his Twitter handle, but it also goes by the name Desert Sports on Twitter. So you just kind of put them both there. He's going cornerback first with Andrew Booth Jr. Another going Enigbari edge, going a different receiver, David Bell out of Purdue. Then Josh Rivas again, Matt Ariza, Kennedy Brooks, Nick Ford, DJ Davidson, a defensive interior. So what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I've actually seen David Bell at Purdue rising on a lot of different draft boards. So it's interesting to see him in our. I think this is the first time we've seen him tonight. We've seen Josh Rivas a few times. Matt Ariza, the punter drama continues. We got Kennedy Brooks. He's a running back that I like. And I think anyone who can get I see. And here's the thing about running back. Everyone thinks like, oh, you're trying to draft the next, Christian McCaffrey or the next Dalvin Cook or the next Derrick Henry. I think in the 6th or 7th round, if you're getting a serviceable running back who can pass protect and be a third down back or even just like a goal line specialist, you're happy with that, right? And so guys, a lot of these guys like Kennedy Brooks really have that kind of high upside, especially at that late in the draft where you're not really using a lot of significant draft capital to get them. Again, interesting, starting the draft off with a corner. I guess we're seeing that. It's either a trade at 23 or you're picking a corner with your first pick. That seems to be the theme of the night tonight. I think Desert Sports you did a great job with this, and I'd be interested to know, because really it's only in terms of skill position just the one running back and one wide receiver in there.
Yeah. So David Bell is interesting. He's 6'1", 212, so he's got decent size. He's kind of a nice solid build. He could probably play outside. I think they like someone a little taller than that ideally, but it's close enough. I haven't really looked at him closely, but I think I don't mind going receiver there on day 2. Andrew Booth is a guy who's available a lot of times at this point in the draft. I haven't really taken him much. I've had him in a few mock drafts. I think there's just other positions I'd rather go for there, or or trade back. That's just me, but they need to look at some cornerback somewhere, though. I would say that I think drafting a cornerback is a good idea. Obviously, edge rusher. And with running back, I've talked about this before. I'm of the mind that what you do is you draft running backs between rounds 4 and 7, and you draft one every year, and you just kind of keep rotating those guys. And right now they have room for probably one running back on the roster, and I don't, pick up someone on day 3, find the best guy available on day 3, get them in your depth chart, and I like it. So. Yeah, I think there's some nice players on here. I think the positions they address are positions we need. David Bell's an interesting name that we haven't really, he played with Rondale Moore at Purdue, so that's interesting too, right? I think there's some nice players here. Let's see. Let's go on to the next one. Robert Moore.
Another trade.
He is traded back though, of just a couple spots in the 2nd round. So he's got Devontae White in the 1st round. King traded back and still got Enigbari, like a lot of people did. Dylan Parham, Tyler Algier, Josh Johnson, receiver out of Tulsa, Kalen Barnes, cornerback, Ariza, Tungo Vailoa, Amosa, and James Empey. Thoughts on this mock draft?
Yeah, I'm just looking over it here. I always love seeing a trade where you get more picks. I'm just looking here. Interesting. Yeah, and again, we have kind of another similar draft where there's not necessarily that many skill position players in it. Really trying to focus on that offensive line and defensive line and also the secondary, which isn't a bad way to go at all. At the end of the day, I think if there's a player that you believe in that can really help your team, you want to take them wherever, regardless where it is in the draft. Josh Johnson, he's a receiver that I see a lot in mock drafts. But the a little bit I've looked at him, I do question if he's ready. Like I don't see him being a plug and play wide receiver, even later in the draft like that. I think he's someone that will need to develop. But again, maybe that's what the Cardinals need at this time at that position.
Yeah, I will say that, and it's a 6th round pick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I taking him in the 6th round, I like in this mock draft that Josh Johnson pick, and I'll tell you why. Obviously, it's a 6th round pick, so it's low risk,
Not
but
significant draft capital, yeah.
Right, but he's 5'11", 183, so that profiles like a slot receiver in the Cardinals system. Mm-hmm. And right now they have Rondale Moore, like we talked about this earlier. Rondale Moore is likely to step into the role that Christian Kirk had. Then we've got Greg Dortch as our other slot receiver. So they're assuming Andy Isabella moves on, and we've got room for another guy because on the outside they've got Hopkins, AJ Green, and Antoine Wesley. So they've got 3 big guys for the outside. And if Isabella moves on, the rest of that wide receiver room is a couple small guys in Dortch and Rondale Moore. So then if they drafted Josh Johnson like in this mock draft, he would be that 3rd receiver in the slot. And he doesn't, Greg Dortch played a little bit for them last year, looked nice in limited action. Rondale Moore is supposed to be the guy there. So Josh Johnson doesn't have to come in and start, right? He can be that 3rd guy, 2nd or 3rd on the depth chart for slot receiver. And so he's only seeing the field, when they're doing 4 receiver sets. I like that for a 6th rounder there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. That's fair.
Another guy that I really like on this draft, who I hadn't really looked at a lot, is Tyler Algier from BYU. And, the reason I like him, I would end up drafting Joe Camo in the 1st round. There is not a position, QB from Georgia. There is not a position on the field I could play adequately enough to justify even an undrafted free agent, but I sincerely appreciate that. But I really like Tyler Algier, and the reason I totally got to give credit to Brett Coleman, who I mentioned earlier. If you haven't checked out Brett's stuff in general, check it out. But he's got some primers where he's looked at receivers, tight ends, and running backs. They're like hour-long videos, so sit down for it. But he talked about Tyler Algier, and he's really interesting because he doesn't have the physical skills. He's not like the fastest or the strongest or whatever, but he has like the best vision of any running back. Like his ability to just anticipate where holes are going to be, and his ability to read the leverage of the defenders. And Brett Coleman talked about this in his video, and he showed some clips, and you watch him and he's looked just silky smooth, just almost like he's got that Jedi mind trick or something. He knows where you see, he just efficiently is finding the holes and anticipating which way the defenders are going. And he's getting every last inch that is to be had there, not because he's faster or stronger, but because he's just smarter and watches the film and anticipates well. And I don't know, running backs like that are sometimes those running backs that get drafted later, but have better careers than people expected, because it doesn't show up at the combine. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't show up in the measurables, but that's one of those things that you get that guy in the field, and some of the stuff he starts doing, is just impressive. So
I think like the name that I always think about whenever someone drafts a running back late is you want Darren Sproles.
Yeah.
That's funny. But yeah,
like
like, but no, like I'm serious though. Like you're not like when you're drafting like that, you're running back in the later rounds, and we've seen now paying a running back in today's NFL is a huge risk, right? Paying, Christian McCaffrey, paying Zeke Elliott,
Who did
and
you all pay a while back?
Todd Gurley, and
Yeah.
the Rams were smart enough to get away from it,
Mhm.
right? And we took the dead cap hit so that it wouldn't have hindered us longer than it had to. And like we literally just stopped paying Todd Gurley last year. Like
Yeah.
his money is fully gone now. And so I think it's when you can get a quality running back later round, then and get someone like a Darren Sproles, you're doing great.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, I like this draft. Again, I don't think they're going to take Wyatt. I like the talent. I just think with the stuff going on, if Tyler Algier ended up being the guy they get to be that running back, I'm really intrigued by what he does. I'd love to get him in there. Yeah, there's some good players on here, and yeah, you don't need to get at running back. You don't need to have a Christian McCaffrey, like you said. You just need some guys that can get it done, that know their roles and are good at what they do, right? For sure. Most hated. That's his name on Twitter.
That's an amazing name.
Yeah, right. It's pretty great. So he's got a Chris Olave, a guy that I really like. He's not the ideal fit for what they want outside, but I just think to me, he seems like one of the most pro-ready guys. Mm-hmm. He's a receiver. I can just see wherever he ends up jumping in there and being a day one starter and just contributing, right? Yeah. Just solid. Drake Jackson, an edge rusher who's got a lot of really great traits. There's needs some development. James Cook, guy we talked about earlier. Adam Anderson, we've talked about him a few times. Jason Poe. Thomas Booker, a guy out of Stanford that I think is intriguing. I profiled him a while back. Really smart. Interesting interior defensive lineman, obviously Matt Araiza, and then cornerback Isaac Taylor Stewart. So what are your thoughts on this mock draft?
I think this is a crowd pleaser draft here. I think if a draft like this came out, Cardinals fans would be over the moon. They would be like, "Oh, we got our second receiver to really complement DeAndre Hopkins, and we got James Cook, who's going to develop into this rookie sensation running back." No, I think that this draft, Cardinals fans would be excited to have a draft like this.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a really solid draft. Again, like I talked about earlier, I just don't think Adam Anderson is going to play out that way. Yeah. He's either going to be day two or not at all, in my opinion. We'll see if I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I don't think this mock draft is the most hated.
Yes, it is not the most hated. I think it actually might be one of the ones that people really like. Yeah, if they ended up with a lot of these players, I'd really like it. Let's see, we got a comment here. So Daniel Jeremiah had a lot of interesting things to say about Drake Jackson. The dude weighs about 20 pounds heavier now than when he played. Huh. So the question is that muscle? But here we go. He still showed well athletically with regard to Underwear Olympics. So maybe he's adding muscle, or I don't know. But I know he's a guy who has a lot of potential and upside, but needs some work. So I would not mind. We got Teddy Jenkins here. Thank you for being here. Or Jennings here. Trade Kime. I don't know what we're going to get from him, but we got a really interesting thought here. Where the Rams should draft Pao Time in the third round. Pretty underrated running back from Toronto.
Oh, I appreciate that, Morris Legacy. I've played a little bit of running back in my life, but I played a lot more wide receiver.
Okay, there you go. So maybe you're our answer for the slot. Oh well, you're not going to play for the Cardinals, so yeah.
Hey, if the Cardinals want me, I'll try.
Yeah, there you go.
You might be better sticking with Isabella.
Right. Moore's Legacy is asking real quick, are you doing a live stream on draft day? I am planning to do a live stream on the first round, at least up to the point where the Cardinals make their pick. I'm not I need to work out some of the details, but I'm planning to do a live stream kind of during the first round on the Thursday. So though I'm like I said, got to work out the details, but I'm planning to do something. So, are you doing anything on your channel for the draft?
I'll do some. No, I'm not doing anything night one. Just the Rams don't pick, and we don't even pick on day 2, or well, like the very end. We have the second last pick of the 3rd round.
So you're doing about as much as the Rams are, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be pretty active the 3rd day of the draft.
Nice. Well, I don't know if I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you're welcome to join the stream with me if you want to hang out, Pao.
Oh,
cool. So let me know, yeah, if you're available or not. But Lance has to head out, so he's got a 5 a.m.
Thanks for hanging.
He's got to be up before any of us do. So appreciate you, Lance. So Mr. Mono's going to hang out with us, so appreciate that. Awesome. So yeah. But I think this is a good mock draft for sure. Next one we have K1 since day one. This is Jordan P, who I haven't seen in the chat tonight, but he's a regular member or regular attendee, so to speak. He's traded back, and he has also got Travis Jones, who's been a popular pick tonight. Mm-hmm. Someone who I love, Nick Benito, also been a popular pick. Alec Pierce, receiver, who I really like. I've taken him a lot in mock drafts. I don't think he's going to be there in round 3. I think he's going somewhere in round 2. He's even getting, some people think late round 1, but I think probably round 2, but we'll see. Dylan Parham again. We got a running back, Zakondre White, with one of the picks that he got in the trade. Defensive tier, Marquand McCall. Luke Wattenberg, the guy who the fix for the Cardinals' future.
Generational talent, Luke Wattenberg. Generational talent. You can get in the 6th round.
Patrick Paul, a tackle out of Houston. That would be 2 tackles out of Houston on the roster because we have Josh Jones, who was drafted in the 3rd round a few years back out of Houston. Cornerback Chamari Connor, and tight end Lucas Kroll, who's shows up on a lot of mock drafts. He's a guy who's got a lot of physical upside, but I think needs some work. So what are your thoughts on this mock draft?
Yeah, again, I love when you can acquire some more picks, and here, you still are in the 1st round. So with that Travis Jones pick, you'll have that beautiful little 5th-year option that Kyler Murray loves. Benita, we've seen him a lot tonight, it's always interesting when there's a player that's kind of reoccurring in all these mock drafts, because to my knowledge, people do these mock drafts separately, and these are just people from all over the world giving you these mock drafts.
Yeah.
I think this would be a fun draft for the Cardinals. Just looking through it, maybe you'd like to see, a little more like in regards to just like the defensive side of the ball, but just because the Cardinals do seem pretty set on offense, but you can never have enough playmakers, right?
Yeah. Listen, if they ended up with this draft, I'd be ecstatic because I don't think Alec Pierce is lasting long. But if they somehow, like, Alec Pierce is a big, fast outside receiver, would love to land him. I think Nick Benito, I'll tell you this, like, I've drafted him a lot in mock drafts. I do, in prepping for each week's show, I do between 10 to 20 mock drafts, just trying different ones and trying different things. And then I pick one that I want because I wanted to highlight something. Nick Benito in my mock drafts is regularly, consistently the best player left at 55. So I think part of the reason you see him a lot is because he's always there when we pick in the 2nd round and we need an edge. So he's a popular pick. But like, if it fell this way, I'd love that, to get Alec Pierce, I would be very happy if this were how it worked out. I wouldn't mind maybe a little more help on the defense, but I will say this, if you're only helping, the spots they've helped are the really important ones, which Matt Jones and Benito, who is a beautiful, beautiful player, right? Because Benito is beautiful in Portuguese, right? So thank you for
language lessons tonight. I love it.
Yeah, there you go. And then, when you not see Benito, I think Benito might in a different draft, he might be a late first rounder. The edge rush class is so deep. I mean, there's a chance he makes his way in the back of the end of the first round. It's possible, but then someone else who we think of as a first rounder sliding. But yeah. But I think this is a good mock draft. I think I'd be pretty happy if it worked out this way, especially that Alec Pierce somehow landed to us in the third round. I don't
know how you got Wattenberg at that.
Yeah, that's how we managed that. I mean, you usually you have to expect to mortgage your future and give up like most of your next year's draft, but maybe whoever, I don't know. Yeah, we weren't dealing with the Rams this time.
Lucked out. Yeah, lucked out.
All right, we got at Reloading 104 who did a nice trade back also. A lot of picks exchanging hands to get it to work out, but got us some middle rounds picks. Traded back, got Zion Johnson, who's a really popular pick. So get us a guard. This is a guy I would love to get Zion Johnson. I think this is would be a really good pick for them. Another receiver, Jalen Tolbert, who's an interesting guy out of South Alabama. Then another trade. I think they traded. It looks like they traded. Did they trade up here? I think they traded back up here with some of the draft capital.
Yeah, he traded up here. Yeah.
Then you got cornerback Marcus Jones, who's a dynamic return man, but he is a slot corner. He's small, so he's going to play in the slot, but he is going to be really good in returning the ball. Running back Dameon Pierce, who's a really good back. And Mr. Mono likes that, right? Dameon Pierce, this draft wins, right? And then we've got a developmental edge rusher, Uwazurike. I probably mispronounced that. Then we got a defensive interior, McCall, tackle and Paul, and Ariza. What's your thoughts on this mock draft?
Yeah. Again, another fun mock draft. This one is very different than a lot of the other drafts we've seen tonight, so it's always nice to see that. Mm-hmm. I think, I've again, in my limited knowledge, but growing knowledge of this draft class, this edge class, as you said, is pretty high. So it's interesting that he left the edge till like the 5th round, where I feel like a lot of the other drafts tonight we've seen edge being kind of prioritized a little bit more. So that's kind of interesting that it's a little different. But yeah, me, I love a good trade back, and hey, if there's a player you want to go get, you go get him. And Marcus Jones is absolutely a cornerback that's worth trading and going up to get in the 3rd round like that.
Yeah. I love the trade back. I don't hate moving up the board a little bit in the middle rounds if there's a guy you like. They did that last year for Marco Wilson. They traded back up into the 4th round. Edge rusher is the one position that coming out of free agency I think, in my opinion, is the most gaping hole. Mm-hmm. They've signed players on offensive line. They've re-signed AJ Green. They signed, a cornerback. They still need some help at some of those positions, but edge rusher is the one position they let, Chandler Jones walked, and they re-signed Devin Kennard, which he's fine. They re-signed, Gardeck, who everyone loves, and that's fine. But that's the one position where they didn't bring in someone from the outside, that where there's a big position of need, that and defensive tackle, I guess. So I think I would like to have seen an edge rusher earlier too, because I think that's of any of the positions, that might be the one position where the Cardinals, if they draft someone, that person has a good chance to become a starter, right? Yeah. At cornerback, they might have to beat out some guys. At guard, we got Will Hernandez we signed, who might end up being the starter. Zion Johnson could beat him for that spot. But an edge rusher, there's an immediate opening for an edge rusher. So yeah. But I think this is a good draft though, right? Overall. All right, so let's look at our next one. Bear, who was in the chat earlier. Yep, hopefully he's still here. Another trade back.
Yeah.
Trading back into the second round.
Okay.
Picking up a lot of day 2 and 3 picks. Benito again. Kenneth Walker going with someone who many people think is the best running back in the draft. Alec Pierce, Marcus Jones, defensive interior Neil Farrell Jr., Derek Deese, the great Wattenberg, Matt Ariza, DJ Dale, EJ Perry, and Bear is here. So hi, Bear.
Hey, there he is.
All right. So thoughts on this one?
Well, first off, whenever you get my generational talented center, Luke Wattenberg, it was a good draft. I'm just kidding.
I know what you're trying to do, Pao. You're trying to get us on the Luke Wattenberg train, so we will stop taking Matt Ariza.
Yeah.
That's what you're trying to do. It's not going to work. Matt Ariza's ours. You can't have him. We had him first.
Hey, just saying, if the Rams draft him, you get Luke Wattenberg. I don't think you should be too happy or too unhappy with that.
It's a win-win, huh?
Yeah. But clearly, Bear in this draft prioritized both those generationally talented players.
Right.
I'm really looking forward to the draft this year to find out where all these players like Luke Wattenberg go, right? Or like even like Neil Farrell Jr. We've seen him in so many mock drafts this year, or Marcus Jones. Like it's just these players that keep coming up. It's like, oh, I really want to know where they end up, right? It's been kind of the fun part about following the draft process closely this year. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I like this draft. I think always a Pao pleaser when you're trading back to accumulate more picks. And yeah, I again a quarterback with your final pick of the draft. I like that. Yeah, I don't have too many like extreme thoughts other than this seems like a pretty good draft, and it seems like one that Cliff Kingsbury would maybe be okay with, especially with the Kenneth Walker pick early on. Like that, I feel like is that a little earlier than you like to see your running backs drafted?
I don't. Yeah, for me, I like taking them on. I think 4th round, 5th round are the sweet spots. I will say like a second round running back, many of the best running backs in the NFL were second rounders, like Dalvin Cook, Henry, Derrick Henry. But like for me, if you're taking a running back in the second round, it just seems like you're going to have to pay him. And I am I don't mind paying like the James Conner deal, like $6 million, $6.5 million. I don't mind that for a couple of years, but I am just not into drafting and setting yourself up in a situation where you have to sign a running back to a 4-year deal for $10 million plus a year. And if you draft him in the first couple rounds, they're going to be really good, and you're going to probably have to pay them that to keep them. And I just would much rather build a really good offensive line, that's what Shanahan does in San Francisco. He's got a rotating kind of stable of guys. He has a good blocking scheme, good offensive line, and then they get undrafted free agents or 6th rounders, who come in and are very effective. And that's what I would rather do. So Kenneth Walker, if they took Kenneth Walker there, I'd be excited about what he's going to do. He's going to be really good. But from a roster building perspective, I want to take them later.
Right.
So yeah. For me, I will say this, if they came out with this draft, I'd be excited about what it's going to mean on the field. Benito's, I think, a good edge rusher. And, and Teddy's saying they've got an edge in Marcus Golden. Just to clarify, yeah, they have Marcus Golden is maybe my favorite Cardinal right now. I love Marcus Golden. Interesting side note, Marcus Golden and I have the same birthday, not the same year because I'm older, but same birthday. Yeah. Marcus Golden is set, but it's across from him where they need that. It's that other side where they don't have that. They don't have where there's an opening. Right. So, Nick Benito there, Kenneth Walker's going to immediately be part of that running back room and be really good. Alec Pierce, again, I don't think he'd be available there, but if it landed like this, I'd be ecstatic. Got some solid defensive interior help in round 4, and then some more in round 7 to kind of for depth. Wattenberg, a backup center. This draft would really be helpful for the roster, I would say. From a long-term roster building perspective, though, there's different ways I want to go. Yeah. Let's see. So let's move on to our next one. Brian Darko. And listen, this is the trade night. It's like the universe knew you were going to be here.
People knew. They knew.
So Traylon Burke. Now,
wow.
I want to talk about this really quickly. Traylon Burke's a guy that a lot of people like because, for a number of reasons. He's a big receiver. He played slot at college, but he's built like our outside receivers, like we like them to be. Really popular pick. I'm not as big on him as some people are, but I think he's good. I think he's going to be good, but I didn't think the Cardinals were interested in him, but they apparently had a meeting with him this week. So he's might be back on their radar, right? Or his visit. Yeah, his visit is tomorrow. So that's something that I saw, in the news. So he is, he's a guy that might really be on the radar for them. So, he could be the pick. Benito, a trade back. Then we get a guard in Marquise Hayes, who I think is an interesting pick. Kind of could be a potential starter at some point. Kyron Williams, the running back out of Notre Dame. Noah Ellis, who's a day 3 defensive lineman that I really like. Josh Johnson, we talked about before. Wattenberg, Ariza, Vandemark, a tackle. DJ Dale. This is got a lot of picks. Took a lot of picks. Eric Gray, James Empey. I don't know where half these guys are going to make the roster.
Yeah, he's
just because there's so many, right?
Jaguars into that pick there.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts about this draft?
11, 12, 13, 14 players in one draft haul. That's a lot. And again, it's funny that it all came from that one trade.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see that trade happening.
Mm-hmm.
Just 5 picks in the same draft for one pick. Like I just don't think those trades happen in the NFL anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I guess the Jaguars really wanted that. If there was a team that would do that, it wasn't for.
Hey, I don't doubt that it wasn't forced.
Yeah, Brian, I appreciate you. I believe you because PFF. I can't believe they would allow this trade. And so you were wise to take this trade. Again, we've seen a number of these players tonight. Interesting, he picked Matt Ariza over Luke Wattenberg. I like this draft. I think taking a receiver in the first round will make fans happy. Bonito, it just seems like that's the constant at that position. So that's interesting. I think this is the first time we've seen Kyron Williams as the running back in the draft taken. And then he took a second running back too in Eric Gray. So interesting.
Yeah, I think my big concern about this one is what we, Simon's saying here, there's a point where you just there aren't this many open spots on the roster.
Yeah.
Some of these guys end up being, I don't think that kind of trade would happen. It's fun to pick a lot of players, but what a depth we got in this. Yeah. So, it's not a realistic trade, right? But I do want to real quick say thank you to Rafael Castillo. Thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Sub TCR, crazy that next Monday is Mock Draft Monday, right? Yeah, I know that's a tear. And this has been so much fun. So we'll do this again next year for sure. I think it's been a resounding success just in terms of the fun we've had. It's helped me to learn about the prospects a lot more. I think hopefully it's done that for other folks. And also Cardinals fans really like Nick Benito, right?
Yeah.
So absolutely Nick Benito seems to be a favorite. So I just want to, though, as always, but thank you, Rafael. Appreciate the generosity. Yes, and we're gonna miss this. So let me just hit on a couple comments here. Chris Young, my rule for trades on Andrew, if it's 80% acceptance rate or higher, that's a nice rule. I probably close. I try to, I probably go a little more than that, or a little lower percent than that for myself. But I think that's a good rule of thumb because they are just something about their trading rationale, and that is just, so
agreed. Yeah.
Hello, Leo DiCaprio. Cheers. Yeah. but yeah, so I think that's a lot of guys. But in terms of the players they took, Burks is a guy that's on the radar, and yeah, and I don't. So we have a guy here. I'm guessing you're probably not familiar with him, but John Gambadoro is kind of the big Cardinal or big. He, not just Cardinals, but he's kind of a local sports radio guy. I've as long as I can remember listening to sports radio in Arizona, John Gambadoro was a name here, and I'm old, so he's a guy who's kind of connected and tied in. And he said that we weren't interested, but maybe we don't know who's feeding that information. Maybe it's a smokescreen. Gambo's usually pretty connected, but sometimes he gets it wrong. And we are having him in for a visit, so who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think. But yeah, it was a 90%. I don't doubt it. That's one of those things where the trade value worked out numerically. It's just, in terms of in real life, teams aren't going to trade that many picks anymore like that. And to be honest, no team wants to pick typically this many players because they don't have a spot for them on the roster. But there's a lot of players we talk about, like Ellis, Kyron Williams, and nice running back on day 3. Get a guard who could, and Hayes has a chance to become a starter at some point potentially. Yeah, a lot of nice players on here. Next we have Rashad, who is very active on Twitter, also very active in the Discord, which is my chance to remind everyone, if you aren't part of the Discord, there's a link below. Join the Discord server. We have great conversations in there. Pao, you're even a member of our Discord server, right? You're in there, right?
Yeah, I am. I'm not super active. I'm terrible at Discord. There's so many things to do in my life that Discord is like low on there. But every now and then I do pop in there to see what Cardinals fans and I have a couple other Discord groups I'm a part of, and yeah, it's always interesting. Yeah.
How dare you not make a Cardinals Discord a priority in your life?
I know. Well, it's this thing.
No, but we've got a lot of folks in here. So if you're not part of that, check it out. Though there's a link below, and it's an active Discord server, right? I mean, listen, I'm in other Discord servers that are not active. Ours is active. There's conversation every day. So, encourage you that. So Rashad is very active in there. His handle in there is Boy Genius, and he's very active. So he's got, I got 2 screens here. One is he did a trade, right? And it shows who was picked. Another Chiefs trade, like trading back with the Chiefs has been really popular. Yeah. So he traded the 23rd pick, and then the Chiefs took Karlaftis, and then we traded back for 29, 94, and 103 in return. So then took David Ojabo. Mano's saying he's drafting next year with that Ojabo pick, right? So yeah. And then took Alec Pierce in round 2, which I think is a more realistic spot than round 3 for him. Sam Williams took another edge who will maybe play this year then. Isaiah Likely, a tight end. Alec Lindstrom, interior offensive line. Jaron Kennard, a cornerback. Jalen Naylor, a receiver. I think he's out of Michigan State, if I'm not mistaken. Or Western Michigan. Let's see. He's one of the Michigans. And then he's also taken Zonovan Knight, running back, and Ben Brown, I believe, a guard out of Ole Miss, maybe. I'd have to. Jalen Naylor is Michigan State, and then I think Ben Brown is, Ole Miss. I'll check that. But anyway, what are your thoughts on this mock?
Yeah, it's again, I always love a trade back. So Rashad, great job with that. I think interesting. I like taking the 2 edge players in your top, like 2 of your top 3 picks with your wide receiver. That's unique. We haven't seen that tonight. That's pretty cool. A tight end we haven't seen yet tonight in Likely. That's a great football name. Mm-hmm. That's a great. I really hope that he gets drafted by the Rams, just because I want to talk about him a lot. Like, he's likely to get the ball. Like, that's the Suns right themselves. But yeah, no, I think this is an exciting mock draft. I'm just looking through it. You have the 2 interior linemen there. That I think is good for the Cardinals. This is a pretty. You know what? This is probably a draft I could see being like realistic.
Yeah, I don't mind this draft. I mean, they went with the two edges, but like David Ojabo is a guy who, had the really, unfortunate injury, during his pro day, is not really going to contribute this year, but his upside, he's a guy who's just scratching the surface and could be like, so I don't mind that they went two edges, because the idea would be Sam Williams would be a guy who might try to compete to play this year, whereas Ojabo be for the future. And then, kind of looking towards the future. I love Alec Pierce, and yeah, if it's a good draft, you're willing to rehab that Achilles, getting a receiver, a nailer, a smaller receiver late. Donovan Knight's a good running back. So yeah, I think this is a solid draft. So, so now this next draft is interesting. Okay. Now, Simon, who's been in here, really great support of the channel, channel member, active in the Discord. Now, you look up at the top here, he's drafting number 5 and 7. So now I cut it off the top. So I guess there's a trade there that we're missing. But he traded later to trade back. But he's got picks 5, 7, and 23. So I wonder what happened.
How did he pull that off?
Well, maybe this happened. Uh-oh. Simon. Now, he talked about this in the Discord. So okay. I'm not gonna take him to task here. Simon wanted to mix things up, and boy did he ever.
Wow.
He did a trade because, listen, the Kyler Murray stuff's in the news. I don't think they're trading him. I think they're going to get a deal done. I think they'll get a deal done before the season starts. But he traded Kyler Murray for Daniel Jones, and then the Giants' 2 first-round picks this year, their second-round pick, and a future first. So listen, and in Simon's defense, he got 3 first-round picks and a second, plus Daniel Jones. So and we gave Simon some crap for this in the Discord, and Simon said, listen, I don't want to trade Murray. I like Murray. But with the stuff in the news, he just wanted to mix it up.
Yeah, so, it's fun. That's fun, son. I like that.
It's fun. We're having fun with it. You trade him for Fumble Jones, right? And Eduardo's response is probably how, right, right. So listen, disclaimer. I want to pay K1, but I wanted to evaluate what a trade would look like. I've tried to use the picks for a soft rebuild, get blue chips instead of for a move on a star quarterback 1 to 2 years. Listen, I have no problem with exploring those ideas. So we gave him crap for it. He does, as long as he's not like, no, I think we should do this, I'm good with it. Right. He got the Deshaun Watson type trade, right? And listen, it's a good exercise if what you're saying is, I want to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
I don't, if you're saying we should do this, I disagree vehemently. But so this is what happened here. So let's go back and look at what Simon did. And I will say, when he did that, there's not a quarterback on here until day 3. Mm-hmm. So he's looking. Who's our starting quarterback? If you're not drafting anyone. We're looking at someone who's still a free agent or something like that. Baker Mayfield, right? Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones. Great. That's even worse. Daniel Jones is the starting quarterback probably. So what he ended up doing as part of this exercise was, Ekwonu, really, really good offensive lineman, Trayvon Walker, an edge with crazy traits, really good traits. Then a cornerback in Andrew Booth, Travis Jones, then a receiver in Khalil Shakir, Zach Tom, who you love, Adam Anderson, we talked about him, Matt Ariza, Cole Turner, Jaron Ely, EJ Perry, and linebacker Jeremiah Gemmel. What are your thoughts on this?
First off, I want to do bravo to Simon for a very entertaining mock draft. And I've been reading some of the comments here, and Simon's absolutely right. If there was a team that was going to make a crazy move like this, it would be the Giants. I think if the Cardinals sent, I don't think Kyler Murray would want this trade to happen, because he's going to just such a worse team and organization at this point right now. I know they're going through a rebuild with new coaching and front office, but yeah, no, I think Kyler Murray would not be happy with this trade. If I was Kyler Murray, I wouldn't want this trade to happen. It is interesting to me, though, because I also know that the Giants are in a terrible cap situation. It's so interesting. They're one of the most talent-deprived team, but I think they're bottom 10 in cap space. It's just crazy. So I don't know if they would have what it takes to trade for Kyler Murray. But anyway, back on the mock draft here. So you make that trade, divide your fan base like crazy, and then you take a tackle and an edge. Interesting, very interesting. And I guess you're assuming those are blue chip players that are going to plug and play when you're drafting 5 and 7 like that. There, you still get to keep. You get your 3. That's the other thing, is the teams are finding out more and more, is if you have 3 first-round picks, you have to extend them and pick up their 5th-year option the same year. It hurts a lot against the cap because it's guaranteed money in that year and it's non-negotiable. So I don't know if the Cardinals want to put themselves in that position, because we just saw the Eagles trade out of that position.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a great. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that might be why they did that, right?
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah.
We've seen a lot of these players, tonight. That I think we're a fan of Zach Tom, if you can get him, in the 3rd or 4th round. Adam Anderson, you've mentioned about him, how you think he might kind of drop off altogether. I like the boldness, Simon. I like it.
Yeah. Someone's asked, what's the story in Devontae Wyatt? I know Michael Richards asked this a couple times. I don't know the exact details of it, but there's some rumors that he's coming off teams' boards because of some kind of off the field stuff, some character concerns. I think there's maybe a history of domestic violence. Was it? I don't remember if that's what it was. I'm trying to read up on it now. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there is something going into that's getting him off of people's boards. And I don't know exactly what it. Let's see. He was arrested in February 2020 for a domestic incident. He was ultimately charged with criminal trespass, damage to property, and family violence, all misdemeanor charges. There were and then Walter Football website is also reporting that were 3 additional domestic instances that were unearthed during private investigations. So it sounds like, teams are taking him off the board. Yeah, so so hopefully whatever it is, he gets. Yeah, that's a concern, right? So I think this draft sets up their roster with some nice depth, right? I mean, it's some key offensive line, some cornerback help, especially offensive line, right? I mean, and then edge. This roster would be much better, just the quarterback, right? It was an interesting exercise, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah,
for sure.
It made for good YouTube vision.
Yes, yes, good. We're not television. It's YouTube vision. Yeah, not Mario. I just checked Instagram, and I don't know if you're talking to me or someone else, but I didn't see anything there. So I'll tell you, if you want, if you're sending me stuff, Twitter and the Discord are the 2 best places to send me information. Really, Discord's the best place, but Twitter also. So Sheldon has a mock draft for us. This might be the last one, if I'm remembering correctly, of the night. Jermaine Johnson, an edge who doesn't fall very often, but sometimes he does. Logan Hall, defensive interior. Logan Hall's another one of those who his height is and weight are not right on PFF. He's taller than what they have him listed as. And then we got some trades.
Yeah.
This traded back to get some picks with the Lions, and then traded back again, it looks like, with the Chiefs. So they got multiple picks on rounds 3 through 5. Donovan West, center from Arizona State, Cordell Flott, Kyron Williams, Josh Johnson, Josh Rivas, DJ Dale, Dejon Dixon, Matt Rides. A lot of names we've seen before later in the draft, but at the top, a couple new names. So thoughts on this one?
It's interesting. The first one that pops out to me is I always mess up his name, but
Donovan West.
Donovan West, yes. that HN just gets me. Anyway, Donovan West. He I feel like in the early days of Mock Draft Monday, we saw him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this might be the first or second time we're seeing him tonight. So, again, that'd be kind of cool. And again, I don't know, are the Cardinals, big into drafting at Arizona State, to be crowd pleasers at all, or?
I wouldn't say they're big on doing that. They've drafted, Eno Benjamin, running back that we drafted, a couple years ago, was out of Arizona State in the 7th round, but they don't, I wouldn't say that they do that consistently. What they're more likely to do, and I don't know if this is for that reason, they do have a number of guys on the roster who are from the Phoenix area and played high school ball, like Byron Murphy Jr., Christian Kirk, both of those guys, and they've had other guys too that are from Arizona. So, real quick, I just want to say a couple comments. I'm saying sorry. I tried to send a super chat, but I don't know. I think he was trying to send a super chat to apologize for the Kyler trade. No, I appreciate you, Simon. Simon's a channel member, really great supporter, active in the Discord. Awesome. So listen, every chat from you, Simon, is a super chat in my heart. No worries. I appreciate you, Simon. Teddy Jenkins saying Teddy's been on the Brock Purdy train for a while. You mentioned, I think last week too, that you think they're going to take it. Maybe, they might, they've met with some quarterbacks, so maybe they'll look for someone but I think that person's going to be at best 3rd on the depth chart, but who knows, right? And Purdy from Gilbert. So maybe, no super chat, no cheers from Leo DiCaprio, right? Listen, that's true. So Arizona State, I don't feel like they do that a lot, but they do get guys from Arizona. Sir, a Rams fan.
It's awkward.
Yeah, awkward. But despite the fact he's a Rams fan, Pao's the best. So Red Sea couldn't be here tonight. So Donovan West is a guy who, though, we've seen in a lot of mock drafts. Yeah. Anyone else on this draft that stands out to you?
No, again, I it's been interesting tonight. That we've seen Josh Johnson a few times now, and I feel like Josh Rivas is someone that it seems like at that position it would make a lot of sense for a team like the Cardinals to take. And he's someone that can offer some upside for sure.
Yeah.
Again, Sheldon, great mock draft.
Now I will say Logan Hall, I think Vance Joseph, I think, went to his pro day or something along those lines. He's a guy who's interesting. He's kind of a more that 3-4 defensive end. So I think that'd be an interesting pick. If Jermaine Johnson is there, I think he'd be a great pick. I just I don't know that he's going to be there. Easy No Steroids saying, I've heard Jermaine Johnson, Ojabo have huge bust potential. Thoughts on that? I think Johnston's a guy who I think is really solid. I think Ojabo maybe has the bigger bust potential just because he's much more of a traits guy. Yeah. And obviously that injury, you just wonder how the recovery is going to be on that. So that's a possibility. But the upside for Ojabo is really sky high. I feel like I mean, I don't know that there's any more of a buzz potential for Johnson than some others, but I'm not an expert on that. To me, I feel like there's actually a guy who I like is but I think has bust potential, a little bit more bust potential, Trayvon Walker, just because the traits are crazy good, but some people wonder he played on such a good Georgia defense.
Mhm.
But he, but I don't know. I mean, listen, I'm not an expert on that, so I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some bust potential. There's bust potential for all these guys. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Jermaine Johnson seems like a guy that is probably less bust potential than Ojabo, but I don't know. Any other thoughts on this mock draft?
No, in particular. I again, fun mock draft. Great job, Sheldon.
Yeah. There's a lot of these players that have repeatedly shown up though tonight that weren't necessarily, like Josh Johnson's been on a lot, and he's not a guy who's been on a lot of mock drafts in previous weeks. So that's interesting, right?
So, and Moore's legacy, no, you cannot get Bryce Perkins. He is a Ram.
Someone asked earlier if we have any Seahawks YouTubers or in our Discord, or I don't have, I'm not really connected with any I know of one, who does stuff with Mike Daisy Sports Fan, I know CZA Smith. Yeah, but like I've never done anything with him, so I know who he is and I follow him on Twitter. But I don't have, like, I have, connections with you and 2 or 3 San Francisco 49ers YouTubers that I've done collabs with. But I don't have any connections with Seahawks folks. So maybe you need to find someone, right? I think that is, yes, the last mock draft. Man, this has been fun. 2 hours.
It's been awesome. It's been awesome.
We went 2 hours and we just and we didn't even do like the mock draft that we had been doing at the end there. Someone posted, you're gonna need to check it out. Someone posted a mock draft for you in the Discord. So I don't want to give away the thunder. So that'll be a good chance for everyone. If you're not in the Discord, you need to get in the Discord, because there's a great, in the Be the GM page. Get in the Discord if you aren't already. Check it out. In the Be the GM chat, Kirk's Legacy, who's Moore's Legacy in here, did a mock draft for Pao, and I think he fixed the Rams.
Oh,
he fixed the Rams
for the Super Bowl. We don't need fixing.
So
I'm looking at it right now. Here we go. So okay.
If I don't have social media accounts, who can I send my mock draft? So how can so if I take them through Discord, I don't know if you're in Discord. Can you, and if you can, there's a link below for how to join Discord. So you can send it through Discord as well. And Kirk's Legacy says you're welcome for that mock draft. All right. I'm not going to show it on the stream here because I want to give people a reason to go into Discord if you aren't.
Yeah, I'll leave a comment. A very angry comment.
Right. But Michael, if I don't think you need a social media account to join Discord. I don't think you do. I could be wrong. So if you join Discord below, there are links below. You can send it to me there. Cattle Dog just jumping in. Hey, Cattle Dog, what's up? What do you think? What do I think about the AJ Green signing? I think it's a solid signing. It means that they're they're not desperate to get a receiver in the draft. I think it allows them the flexibility to take a receiver, but if they can't get a guy who can start right away, they've got a guy who can start. They didn't pay too much for him. I like the signing. I know it's not going to excite some people, but yeah. All right. So we have one more mock draft Monday next week, as we mentioned, but we're about to wrap up. We've gone 2 hours and then 2 hours and some change. It has been so much fun.
It's been awesome.
Listen, I if y'all don't know, and I think I mentioned it early on, Pao jumped in last minute. I literally messaged him like about an hour before we started, and such a good dude. Appreciate you being here. And make sure I've got a link to his channel and his Twitter in the description below. So if you aren't following Pao Time, subscribe to his channel. He does good stuff. Follow him on Twitter. Show them some love and support. Pao, anything you want to say to the folks before we leave?
Yeah. Hey, you guys got one on us last year, so honestly, guys, this has been a blast. Thank you so much, Joe, for having me on. For those in the chat, thanks for interacting with me. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you guys tonight. Always a pleasure on the Cardinal Rule. And I do have a really cool series coming up. I did it last year, and it was a lot of fun. I'm going to do it again. It's called MOOF, which stands for Most Overly Optimistic Fan in the NFL. I interview one fan from every NFL team. Last year, I got through 26 of 32 teams. But this year I'm more established and I know more people. So I'm optimistic that I can get through all 32. And literally it's me interviewing, fans, giving them permission with no judgment to be as optimistic as possible, as realistically possible. And it's a lot of fun. Like last year, my Bengals fan, he had the Bengals going 8-9, and then lo and behold, they were in the Super Bowl, right? And so it's fun seeing all that, how all that works out. So that's a really fun series that's going to be coming up. And then I will just give a little plug that on September 8th, which is the first day, the first game where the Rams will be playing their home opener and the start of the 2022 season. Please come check out my channel. I'm going to be doing a charity live stream to help fight hunger. We're going to be talking football for food security that day. So if you could mark that in your calendar, really appreciate it.
Yeah, I love it. And reach out to me a little before then, and maybe I can help kind of do some blasts out on my social media and whatever I can to help my limited reach, help point people towards what you're doing for charity. So awesome. Again, everyone follow Zach, Pao Time. Really appreciate him. Listen, this has been a lot of fun tonight. I mean, we had some fun. It was a little loose, had some nice humor. This is one of the more fun, I think, live streams we've done in a while, in my opinion. They're all fun, but we had some fun, joked around. I'm gonna miss this when Mock Draft Monday is over, but definitely appreciate everyone who's here. Appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the chats in general. Appreciate all the comments, the mock drafts. You guys have made Mock Draft Monday what it is. I mean, we did 2 hours because of all the wonderful mock drafts you submitted. Mm-hmm. So we're gonna wrap this up. It's been a really great night. I'm not doing a Thursday night live stream like I normally do this week. I've got some obligations going on, but we'll see you all next Monday, the last Mock Draft Monday of the season. Wow. All right. So I'm going to do what I often do, which is I'm going to end it with my channel member shout out screen, just to kind of thank and acknowledge all the channel members. And we will see you all next time. Peace.